Welcome back to the channel. You're watching 40 Noob NZ. On this channel we talk about motorbikes in general. We talk about what it's like to be a new rider, particularly new rider in their say middle-aged years. I am newbie to motorcycles. I'm just coming up on 2 years on a bike, and here in New Zealand that means that I'm just about ready to go for my full license. We have 3 license classes here. We have learner and restricted, and then it goes up to a full license, and it doesn't matter how old you are, how responsible do you think you are, you're subjected to those same rules. So I started motorcycling. For those of you that haven't followed my channel before, hey, switched off my indicator. So for those of you that haven't been following my channel, I started off on motorbikes around about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, and I started out on a Hyosung Aquila GV250. I ended up having a motorcycle accident, and a car turned in front of me while texting on their cell phone, so please don't do that. Hello, Mr. Tractor. Thank you very much, sir. So what ended up happening was I've had a couple of rounds of surgery and what have you to try and fix my knee, and my bike got written off. So because of all of that, I ended up with this beautiful girl, because the insurance company paid me out and I saved up a little bit of money, and I got this. So what is this? This is a 2005 Suzuki V-Strom. Now when I got it, wasn't in very good condition, I have to say. I've done a lot of work to this to be able to get it up to scratch, and right now what you're looking at is the result of all of that hard work and effort. So I've also added quite a few things to the bike. I have aftermarket levers on it. I've got aftermarket crash protection for your hands. I've got Givy crash protection down here. I'm just waiting on a bash plate. I've got pannier racks on the back, which I didn't have before. So I've got a lot of cool little features on here. I've put a new clutch on it. I've put new starter motor, starter solenoid. I've done just about all the work you can possibly think of to this thing to be able to get it running nicely. New chain and sprockets and all sorts of things. So as a result, the bike's running like a dream, and instead of going out and purchasing a new bike, which is what I thought I was going to do originally, I elected to go out and purchase nothing. I decided to stick with this bike because to be able to get the equivalent bike to this would be about $15,000 New Zealand. And to be perfectly frank and honest with you, I am tight. And so, whoa, gravel. Whoa. Now that wasn't so crash hot, right at the top of an apex on a corner. Apex of a hill and on a corner. That was a bit dodgy. What we're doing today is we're out test riding this 2005 Suzuki V-Strom. This is the 650cc Lambs version, so that's the 47 horsepower version of the these come out in 2005 at 68 horsepower. I believe they're getting around about 70 horsepower out of these now, with the new modifications to the engines over the last few years. So why'd I go to the adventure bike? Well, you're about to find out. I like going off-road, and this one happened to be cheaper than any of the other bikes that I saw out there on the market. I had the option of going up to around about $9,000 or $10,000, but this one was cheap, and I thought, I'll just buy that one. I bought it sight unseen. I hadn't test ridden it, nothing. When I got it, they'd done a cam chain. They'd done all the cam chains and cam chain tensioners, etc., on the bike, and they hadn't set the valve timing correctly. So I rode it from Auckland to Hamilton, which is around about 100 kilometres thereabouts, and it turns out that it's not so good for the engine to do that. So fortunately it was under warranty because I bought it from a dealership, and they replaced everything for me and fixed it all up, and so it's had new cam chain tensioners, it's had a series of new valves on it, it's had all sorts of really cool things, and that means that at 78,000 Ks, I bought this at 69,000 Ks, quail, and so as a result of being able to have all of that work done, it runs just like a brand new bike. It's also had a new clutch and everything, and this is why I chose adventure bikes. So had an operation on my knee from the motorcycle accident, so I'm not willing to stand up on this, so hopefully we go okay. Now this is a big heavy beast, and unlike some of the bikes that I've test ridden in previous videos, I do have to take this a little bit easier around the corners because by golly she's heavy, and if you've got to lift her up on your own you might be in a bit of trouble. However, especially with a crook knee like I've got. However, as you can see, she does the dirt just nicely. Just a little, I'm just very careful around this corner because I've had a car come around before and just about take me out. So she's really good at doing these types of roads where we are just on lots of loose gravel, and the problem with these kinds of roads is the fact that it is loose gravel and it's on compacted clay, so it gets very slippery over the winter months, and the gravel itself is just like marbles when it's dry, so it does make things very interesting. I'm currently running 2 Shinko 705s on this bike. They are fantastic on gravel, they are fantastic on dirt, they are not good in sand, and they are not good when it's wet. That's not to say that you can't ride them when it's wet, but you definitely know the difference between a dry day and a wet day on these tyres. It is a definite case of having to reduce your speed. So how does the 2005 V-Strom handle on gravel and dirt roads? Perfectly, no issues with this whatsoever. This does have the cast wheels, it doesn't have wire spoke wheels. I haven't had a problem because this is kind of as rough as I get with this bike, or any bike really, to be perfectly honest. It's all about gravel roads for me. This bike probably spends 30% of its time on gravel, and probably 60 to 70% of its time on tar seal, and then there's the odd bit of dirt and sand that I've tried it on as well. So, but mainly it lives on gravel roads and tarmac. So let's move to the next section and we'll see how things go there. Just get around this corner and then I'll switch off the camera. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the bike here at this point. So she's an old girl, so she's got a few dings and scratches on her. She has been used for off-roading, so you've got to kind of expect that. I am just waiting on a bash plate for her at the moment. I've changed out the foot pegs here so that I've got these nice grippy foot pegs for off-road. They work quite well, so as you can see, for an old girl, she's not in bad condition, just a few scratches here and there. I have the saddlebags on her. I do quite a bit of travelling around the place, so it's handy to have quite a bit of storage there. I bought these aftermarket levers, and I found them to be absolutely amazing. just a bit more feel, and able to use 2 to 3 fingers instead of having to use my whole hand to control the levers like you would have to with the stock levers. I put this little windscreen extension on there just because I was finding that I was getting a little bit of buffeting on the head. Apart from that, I've put a wider foot pad on her because I found that in winter the standard one just sinks into the ground, and I've had her fall over as a result of that, and she broke the indicators. So these are all new indicators on here. Funnily enough, nothing on a Suzuki is overly cheap to buy, so those indicators were New Zealand, I think around $300. Anything I buy on this bike has 2 zeros behind it at least. So like I say, Shinko 705s on there, they've worked really well. I do want to try out some different tyres, so if you've got some suggestions, let me know. This one here has still got, well, both front and rear have probably still got around about 7,000 kilometres to run, but I should get through those probably before the end of the year. Scorpion exhaust was on it before I bought the bike, and does give it a really nice sound, though I do find I like quiet bikes. I don't care what anyone says. So that's the bike. She's done 78,000 Ks, so she's not new to this whole adventure stuff. I have also added on there, I have a USB connection here, and it's a fast charge, so it's a 3 amp one. I have that connected to, in here I have my GoPro batteries. So I have my GoPro batteries, and I have this is my communication device, and I've also in this bag here, I won't pull it out, but I have an Airmoto pump, so that I can pump up my tyres if I get a flat, really handy little bike to have, because it has basically everything on it. This is also wireless charging for my phone, so if I'm using GPS etc, I can put it on there. I don't have to worry about wires and cables, and it makes buying a GPS redundant. So I have all of that sitting on the bike at the moment, and I elected to keep the bike simply because I put a bit of money into it, and there was nothing else out there on the market that was so amazing to me that I thought, you know what, I got to have that instead of this one. And I'm quite miserly, I'm cheap. If I don't have to spend the money, I won't spend the money, and unless I can see real true value in it, I won't buy it. So that's a bit of a walk around on the bike. We're going to head down this hill. Now it doesn't look overly steep, but I can assure you it does actually get quite steep. I'm just going to change out my GoPro battery because for some reason this battery doesn't seem to be lasting for very long. We'll get to the bottom of the hill, and well, I'll take you through some of this section. Now when you see my reviews, you'll see that I always come through this section. It's not far from town, and it's quite pretty, and it gives you a good selection of roads to choose from. So today we're going to head out, and we're going to have a bit of a jaunt around the same area, and hopefully you enjoy the ride, and we might have a bit of a talk about some of the bikes that I've been looking at, and what I might get in the next year or two. I have decided I'm going to hold on to this at least till the end of the year. Potentially I'll be hanging on to this until the end of next year, just because I don't see anything wrong with the bike at the moment, and there's really got to be something that really takes my fancy before I want to spend the extra cash. So without further ado, we'll get back on the road again. Okay, so we'll just give you a bit of a sound of that exhaust back there. So it sounds quite good. I love the V-twins, eh? Just has a bit of something special to it. So anyway, we're off. So of course this bike has no ABS, it has no traction control, it has nothing fancy to it. It is bike and you, that is it. Probably the last generation of that kind of bike. And I started out thinking that, you know, maybe it was better to get ABS, and maybe it was better to do this, and maybe it was better to do that. And the other thing, I can honestly say at this point, I don't feel that way anymore. I think that a bike is a bike, and if it's got those things, then it's got those things. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. At the end of the day, they keep making better idiots, so it doesn't matter how safe you make something, they're still going to find a way to kill themselves. So the trick to riding a motorcycle and surviving is to do the courses. I do courses here in New Zealand, they're called Ride Forever. So I do courses with really experienced instructors, qualified instructors, and I also spend a lot of time on my bike and practicing the things that they teach. So not to say that I'm a perfect rider by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that a rider with all of the knowledge and all of the know-how that practices frequently is going to outstrip somebody with traction control and ABS any day of the week, and I've seen them do it. So the trick is practice, 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 practice. So I own 3 motorcycles. I've got a farm bike, I've got this, and I've got a Hyosung Kila GV250, and so between all of them I probably do, I would say probably 15,000 kilometers a year. I'd like to do more, but there's this little thing called work that keeps interfering with things. And I ride in all weather, so whether it's rain or hail or sleet, snow, I don't really care what the weather is. I just put on better gear and go, and that's why I know how these tyres act in the wet. So these are a fairly good bike for just about anything that you want to do. And you know, to pick one of these up is $6,000 or $7,000 in really good condition, and a first-hand bike, same bike but brand new, is $15,000. So kind of got to sit there and go, well, if I can get the same thing, or pretty much the same thing, maybe minus a couple of little mod cons, for half the price, I'll just go and buy it for half the price. There are a lot of really cool bikes out there. I really like the Benelli that I rode. I really like the Himalayan, which is only $8,250 brand new. I really like those bikes. They're really good bikes, but were they good enough for me to turn around and go, oh, I'll trade in this bike that I owe no money on and go out and buy something that I owe money on? And the answer to that was no. And there are a couple of bikes that I want to try out. There's a CF Moto, which is MT800, but I have to wait until I've got my full license to test that, and that will be a really cool bike. I think it's got your ABS, it's got rider modes, it's got a whole bunch of really cool features to it, including cruise control, and that's the same price as a new V-Strom with a KTM 800 motor in it. So I definitely want to give that sucker a go, but this bike, in the meantime, it's doing everything that I want it to do. I've just got all of the bells and whistles sorted out. Just realised I haven't flick that on. One of the pains about this one here is you've got to turn it on every time you use the bike. But it gives you voltage running to it as well, which is cool. So yeah, at any rate, we're gonna head off down the road a little bit further, and I'll have a chat to you guys about how it handles in the Twisties. But certainly for off-road, it is an amazing bike. Alright, so here we go on to the Twisties. See how we go here. Mind that this bike is on Shinko 705s, and they're a 70/30 tyre, they're not a road tyre. A couple of other like-minded people. This bike handles great in the Twisties. Great in the Twisties. A little bit heavy because she's an adventure bike, so she's not going to be a sport touring bike or a sport bike, but she comes pretty close, I think. Now I've had somebody on the back here, I'm not telling you when or where or how, but I had somebody on the back of this bike and they were roughly the same weight as me. There's probably another second or two to 100 kilometers an hour from a standstill, but you know what? It actually handled everything really well, so I think, I actually think that this bike is great for touring. It's only a 650, so you know it uses just over 4 litres of fuel per 100 k's. So what would that be, about 1 gallon every 60 miles, thereabouts. Now those like-minded people have just pulled up behind me, so I may have to just let them go through. Just let this guy go as well. So she's never going to keep up with those sport bikes. But you know, she's not bad. She's not bad. I could probably push a lot harder, but I don't want to. I feel like getting home with all my arms and legs today, so but yeah, great bike for doing this kind of stuff. Really comfortable saddle, so you're able to go long distances. My longest trip on this so far has been around 750 k's in a day, but I probably average, and that's why you don't go too quick. So I probably average around about 200 to 300 kilometers per trip, so that's around about 300 miles per trip, but you know, anything up to 600 or 700 k's, and I got some big trips planned. So you know, Yep, cool. So, a lot of motorcyclists down this road on a Saturday. So yeah, we're riding a bike that kind of does it all. You can carry your equipment with you to be able to fix it on the side of the road like those guys are doing now. It goes relatively quick and fast around the Twisties, but not as good as a sport bike. So reasons for buying one of these: well, a sport bike doesn't go into the gravel, and a dirt bike doesn't do the road very well. This is the best compromise between them. I still don't think that you'll go too far past any of these ADV bikes insofar as a bike which you could use to do multiple applications. If you only have to have one bike in your stable, and you want to have a varied riding experience, you don't want to always ride roads, you don't want to always ride dirt, this is the only way to go. There's an argument for dual sports, but they're just not as comfortable for long trips. And so I think personally this bike is probably one of the best bikes anybody could possibly want for any situation, period. And that's not to say that necessarily you have to have a V-Strom, but you know, these are a dime a dozen. There are so many of them. They're cheap, they're reliable, for the most part anyway. My one wasn't to start with, but it's going pretty good now. And you've always got dealer support, you know. You're not worried about, oh, if I break down in the depths of the South Island, say, or if you're doing the Trans-America Trail, am I going to be able to find parts for this bike? It's a Suzuki, they're everywhere. Some of the other bikes that I've been looking at, you know, their dealer network's not very strong, and that is a factor when you're doing long miles. The thing I do like about the Suzuki is that you can break down in the middle of nowhere, and you can pretty well rest assured that the next tiny village is probably going to have a Suzuki or a Honda dealer or somebody that's going to be able to handle grabbing some parts for you. So yeah, I mean, these things are 3.8 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour, 185 kilometer an hour top speed. They go on road, they go off road. What else do you want? What else do you want? You know, you can argue the traction control and ABS, but to be honest with you, after riding a few bikes with traction control and ABS, I can stop just as fast as this can, at least in ideal conditions. And the big factor to it is that if I was going to have anything else on this bike, if I wanted anything else on this bike, it would be cruise control, because I get a sore wrist after 4 or 5 hours on the road, and it'd just be nice to be able to lock it off. But as you can see, it goes really, really well through tight and twisty corners, even when the road conditions aren't perfect. Does it on cheap tyres too. And so that's it. That's the full crux of why you want to buy an old adventure bike. It's cheap. You can still buy parts for them. They are just as comfortable as anything else out there on the road. They give you that riding experience that you're after. And you know, there's lots of aftermarket parts for these things. So anyway, I'm just heading into a bit more bush, and I might let the video run for a little bit longer. So enjoy the ride, In the meantime, keep your rubber side down, keep yourselves safe. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and we'll see you in the next video.